Quick disclaimer, information in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be treated as medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare team before making changes to your diet, lifestyle, supplementation, or medication.
Oatmeal is one of those foods that sounds healthy, looks healthy, and is marketed as healthy, but when you look at what actually happens to most people's blood sugar readings, that's when real-life insights help you make informed choices for your health.
Welcome to Type 2 Diabetes Talk, the place where we chat about what really works to treat type 2 diabetes and prediabetes naturally with nutrition and lifestyle. If you're looking to optimize blood sugar and A1C, lose weight, reduce medications, and improve your overall health, this is the place to be. Now, here's your host, Type 2 Diabetes Nutrition Specialist, Dr. Jetta.
Hello, wonderful people. Thanks for joining me. Today I want to dive into a food that causes more confusion than almost any other breakfast item: oats and oatmeal. It's one of those foods that gets held up as heart healthy, wholesome, good carbs, and all the rest of the buzzwords that you hear. And if you're living with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, you've probably heard at least 10 different pieces of advice about it, many of them contradicting each other. And honestly, I hear the same kinds of questions every single week. People ask me, do you know if eating oatmeal is good for diabetics? Or, I make steel-cut oats and add honey and fruit. Is that enough to balance it out? Is that a good breakfast? Others tell me, my dietitian told me eating porridge is healthy and to include it in my meals. So what's the deal? And then there's the classic, I'm confused. Can I eat oatmeal or not? Well, this episode is all about clearing up common confusions about oats and oatmeal. We're going to look at the nutrition facts, the glycemic index, what the research really says, and most importantly, how oatmeal behaves in real people with real blood sugar patterns, because that's what actually matters. By the end, you'll know exactly whether oatmeal fits your body or whether it's one of those foods that looks healthy on paper but sends your glucose numbers on a roller coaster ride. Let's start with the simple question everyone wants answered. Is oats and oatmeal good for diabetics? The short answer: there are some exceptions, and some individuals genuinely do handle it okay. Their blood sugars stay steady and oats don't cause any problems for them. But for most people with pre or T2 diabetes, oats and oatmeal is a high carbohydrate food that sends blood sugar in one direction, straight up. And that's the part most people don't hear. Oats are often promoted as healthy, but healthy for who? Healthy in what context? A food can be nutritious and still be completely unhelpful for your glucose control. The real question to ask yourself is, what does my blood sugar do when I eat it? Not what the box says, not what you've been told at a clinic, not the health claims on the front label. What does your meter say? If your blood sugar is creeping up, if you're struggling to lower your A1C, or if mornings are the hardest part of your day, oatmeal is usually part of that pattern for many people and not a good part. So as you'll discover today, oats and oatmeal just have too much carbohydrate in one hit for most people who are trying to stabilise their numbers or reverse their condition. So before we even get into the nutrition facts or the glycemic index, that's the key message. Oatmeal isn't automatically bad, but it's rarely the best choice for someone trying to manage glucose levels. Now, let's talk about the biggest reason oats and oatmeal cause so much trouble: the carbohydrate load. And this is where things start to make sense for many people, because once you see the numbers, the blood sugar spikes aren't a mystery anymore. When you look at the nutrition facts, oats are simply a carbohydrate-dense food. Even a small serving packs in a lot more carbs than people realise. For example, depending on the type of oats you use, you're looking at anywhere from around 19 grams of carbs on the low end, all the way up to more than 50 grams for some quick or instant oatmeal versions. And remember, that's before adding anything on top. Most people aren't eating plain oats cooked in water. They're adding fruit, honey, raisins, maple syrup, all of which add more sugar. So a bowl that starts with 19 or 25 or 30 grams of carbs can quickly turn into a 40 or 50 or 60 plus gram meal without you even realising it. And here's the thing, out of all the macronutrients, protein, fat and carbs, carbohydrates have the biggest and the fastest impact on blood sugar. Protein doesn't spike blood sugar too much. Fat doesn't spike it at all. Carbs do. So starting your day with a heavy carbohydrate load doesn't give you a strong foundation for the day. Unfortunately, for most people, eating oats and oatmeal means blood glucose spikes. So once you understand that, the whole oatmeal puzzle becomes a lot clearer. It's not that oatmeal is evil, it's just that your body reacts to carbohydrates in a very particular way, and oats supply them in a concentrated form.
Dr. Jetta's T2 diet program isn't just based on research, it is the research. The only online nutrition program worldwide proven in a gold standard randomized controlled trial to lower blood sugar and A1C, reduce weight, and decrease medications. Stop guessing and start progressing. Join the only program backed by world-leading science and proven to help you get the best results. Visit type2diabetestalk.com/programs.
Now, one of the biggest reasons oatmeal is promoted so heavily is because of its fibre content. If you've ever Googled healthy breakfast, oats are always sitting right at the top of the list, mostly because of this idea that they're a high fibre food. And look, fibre is fantastic. We absolutely need it. It helps digestion, supports the gut microbiome, helps us feel full, stabilises blood sugar, helps lower cholesterol. Fibre can do a lot of good things. And most people aren't getting enough fibre, so I completely understand why oatmeal has earned this health halo. But there's an important detail that often gets missed. The main type of fibre in oats is a soluble fibre called beta-glucan. And yes, there's research showing that beta-glucan can improve cholesterol and even help with glucose control. But, and this is the part no one really talks about, you only get those benefits when you consume around 3 grams of beta-glucan fibre per day. To reach that amount, you'll need to eat roughly 3/4 of a cup of dried oats, and that serving size gives you a whopping 40 grams of carbohydrate approximately in one single hit. People with pre or T2 diabetes can't eat that amount of carbohydrate in one hit without seeing a significant blood sugar spike. So while the beta-glucan story is scientifically valid, the dose required makes it completely unrealistic for most people who are genuinely trying to improve their A1C. And here's the other key point. You don't have to rely on oats for fibre. There are plenty of blood sugar-friendly foods that give you just as much or more fibre without the glucose surge. A few examples are 1 tablespoon of chia seeds has 8 grams of fibre. Half an avocado gives you 6.7 grams of fibre. 1 cup of broccoli gives you around 5 grams. An ounce or 28 grams of hazelnuts, 4 grams of fibre. And even a medium carrot gives you nearly 2 grams. So yes, oats contain fibre, but they're not the only source, and they're definitely not the best choice if you're trying to increase fibre without increasing your blood sugar. And this is where people often tell me, oh, okay, now it makes sense. So maybe you had an aha moment too, and I hope that's the case. But let's move into another piece of the oatmeal puzzle that people often lean on, the glycemic index or GI. You'll hear phrases like still cut oats are low GI or instant oats are high GI, as if that alone determines whether oats are good or bad for blood sugar. Well, the glycemic index is a measure of how quickly a food raises your blood glucose on a scale of 0 to 100. Lower numbers mean a slower rise, higher numbers mean a faster rise. Look, it's useful in some situations, but it doesn't tell the whole story, especially when it comes to diabetes. So, firstly, let's look at how oats stack up in terms of the GI. So, oat bran has a GI of around 51, whole grain oats cooked with water, 51, steel cut oats, 55, oatmeal porridge, 64, instant oats, 76, and instant packets can go as high as 83 in terms of GI. So, yes, you can see there's a pretty big range depending on the type of oats you eat. And whole oats and steel-cut oats sit in that low to medium GI category, while instant oats head straight into high GI zone. But here's the important part, and it's the part that gets overlooked in almost every discussion, particularly when it comes to diabetes. So the glycemic index doesn't cancel out the carbohydrate content. You can have a low GI food that still contains a large amount of carbohydrate, and oats fall right into that category. Even the lowest GI versions still contain 25, 30, even 40 grams of carbohydrate per serving. And for most people with pre or T2 diabetes, that's enough to raise blood sugar regardless of how slow or fast it digests. And this is why some people say, "But I chose steel-cut oats, shouldn't that be better?" It's better on paper, yes, but not necessarily better in terms of your blood sugar results. A low GI, high-carb food is still a high-carb food. So while the GI of oats offers some information, it doesn't solve the underlying issue. The carbohydrate load is still the biggest driver of blood sugar spikes. Before we look at the research on oats and diabetes, let's hear a testimonial from one of our members.
Tracy said, "I have enjoyed the yummy recipes you have provided, and I'm happy to say my last A1C was a 5.7. I've loved being a part of the group, and you were very instrumental in helping me achieve my current A1C. Thank you."
Now let's talk about the research, because this is where things often get misunderstood. Many dietitians recommend oats to people with diabetes based on the idea that they're heart healthy or high fibre or good for cholesterol. But when you look closely at the evidence specifically relating to blood sugar and A1C, the story isn't nearly as strong as people think. So one of the biggest points to understand is this. Most of the studies showing benefits from oats, they're not using regular oatmeal. They use concentrated forms of oats like beta-glucan extracts, oat-enriched drinks or formulas specifically designed to deliver a higher amount of beta-glucan without all the carbohydrate. In other words, researchers aren't asking people to eat a big bowl of oatmeal for breakfast and then measuring their A1C or their cholesterol or anything else. They're using controlled, concentrated supplements, and that's a very different scenario from what you'd eat at home. The research consistently shows that to get meaningful benefits, especially for cholesterol, where oats often get promoted, you need that 3 grams of beta-glucan per day. And we talked about this earlier. To hit that amount through actual oats, you'd have to eat around 3/4 a cup of dried oats, which gives you around 40 grams of carbohydrate in a single serve. And that's simply too much for most people trying to stabilise blood sugar. So yes, there are benefits associated with beta-glucan, but the practical reality is that the amount required is incompatible with good glucose control for many people living with pre or T2 diabetes. And when you step back and look at the broader evidence, the research does not show that eating oats or oatmeal is an effective strategy for lowering blood sugar or A1C. That's the key point. the benefits you hear about are largely tied to enriched products, not everyday oatmeal. And this is why so many people say, well, I thought this was supposed to help me, but my blood sugar says otherwise. The common advice on oats and oatmeal just isn't based on outcomes that apply to real life for people trying to manage blood glucose. So now that we've unpacked the carbs, the fibre, the GI and the research, let's bring this into everyday life, because people aren't just asking, are oats good or bad? They're asking, okay, but what should I do? So here are some simple do's and don'ts that help cut through the noise. Do. Choose whole oats if you're going to test it. If you're determined to see whether oatmeal works for you, stick with whole or steel-cut oats. The research is certainly clear that these forms digest more slowly than instant or quick oats and are just much better for you. Just keep in mind, slower digestion doesn't mean no blood sugar rise. Don't add fruit or honey. I know it feels like you're building a nutritious bowl with apples and berries and raisins and honeys or maple syrups, but all of those extra sources of sugar, they add up one after the other. So if oats already come in high on the carb count, adding more sugar on top is almost guaranteed to spike your blood glucose. Do use nuts, seeds or vanilla extract instead. So if you want to stretch out the carbs a bit, stick with additions that offer healthy fats and fibre, such as chia seeds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, and a splash of vanilla extract. They won't magically cancel out the carbs, but they won't make things worse either. Don't go overboard on portions. It's incredibly easy to overserve oats because they look small when they're dry, but once you start eating more than half a cup cooked or even a quarter of a cup for many people, that carb load stacks up quickly. So for most people, even that smaller serving of a quarter of a cup can still be too much. Perhaps 1 or 2 tablespoons in a homemade muesli or an overnight oats could work if you want to test it. Which brings us to, do test your blood sugar. At the end of the day, your meter is the most honest feedback you'll ever get. If you want to know whether oats work for you, test before eating, and then you can test at the 1 hour point and the 2 hour point after eating. And if you see a spike, you have your answer. No guesswork. No, maybe it's good, maybe it's not. You will know if oats work for you. So use your meter for honest feedback that is specific to you. Don't rely on oats for fibre. You have plenty of better ways to get fibre from vegetables, avocado, nuts, seeds, and low-sugar fruits. You don't need oatmeal to meet your daily fibre needs. So let's just recap the big picture here. Some people can tolerate oats. Most people don't. And that's okay. It doesn't make the food bad. It doesn't make you the problem. It just simply means your body responds differently. And you have to understand that. In the end, the goal is always the same: stable blood sugar, a lower A1C, and meals that actually work for your physiology to support optimal metabolism for you. So where does all of this leave us? Oatmeal is one of those foods that sounds healthy, looks healthy, it's marketed as healthy, but when you look at what actually happens in real blood sugar readings, it's just not a great fit for most people trying to manage or reverse pre or T2 diabetes. That's the reality. The carb load is high, the glycemic impact is real, and the amount you'd need to get the benefits of the fibre is simply more than most people can handle without a blood sugar spike. Oats are simply not the best choice if your goal is stable blood sugar and a lower A1C. If you're unsure, test it. Your blood sugar will give you the truth every time. And if you're ready for a more reliable breakfast option, choose meals built around protein, vegetables, and healthy fats, the foods that genuinely support steady glucose throughout the day. And we have covered breakfast ideas in previous episodes 19 and 68. So please go and listen to those for plenty of ideas to inspire a more blood sugar friendly breakfast. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you got a lot out of this episode, so please share it around, and I'll see you in the next episode. Dr. Jetta, over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to Type 2 Diabetes Talk. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. And for episode replays, episode notes, and more, visit type2diabetestalk.com. New episodes are available Tuesdays, 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, or your time zone equivalent. Thanks again. We're truly grateful to be a part of your life and help make a real difference.